My name's Joshua Patrick. I live in northern WA, not that I'm sure most of you don't know where that is. Um, I live here with my three sisters and two parents. But the reason I'm here tonight is because I want to talk about my middle sister, Charlotte, who was born with an undiagnosed syndrome. Now, Charlotte, though she has an undiagnosed syndrome, she was born with a few what we call symptoms. For example, she's non-verbal. She has no left diaphragm. She only lives with two-thirds of one lung. She's peg-fed. She has cerebral palsy, autism, has a seizure disorder, has a heart defect. And in her life, she has had over 60 operations with 700 nights spent in hospital, which is 2 hours away from our home. So throughout my younger years, I've looked after Charlotte in a variety of ways, from everything from inserting nasogastric tubes to priming and setting up her feeds, to swapping over bile bags and changing ports at home, as well as the more intense stuff like making sure I can actually resuscitate her and providing oxygen to her through either nasal prongs or a mask. Now, what did my journey look like? So when my mum was 22 weeks pregnant with Charlotte, Charlotte was diagnosed with having a diaphragmatic hernia. And when my family discussed this grim prognosis that Charlotte had, I thought it was quite obvious to me that we should kind of let her decide whether she wanted to live and whether she wanted to fight to survive. And that's what we did. We continued with the pregnancy and let Charlotte decide whether she wanted to live. So for the rest of the pregnancy, Mum went away and had to drain liquids from herself to make sure that Charlotte was still able to survive, and herself. And after Charlotte's birth, she spent 6 weeks in the NICU unit, in which Charlotte had her first 3 operations. When Charlotte came home, we still believed that Charlotte was, other than her diaphragmatic hernia, a healthy child. However, from having 60 operations and having 700 nights in hospital, this wasn't the case. With the commencement of seizures and a growing list of medical issues, the family had to spend an increasing amount of time in hospital, which kind of led to my education and my family and my siblings' education kind of being, or suffering a bit there. Now Charlotte is under the care of 18 specialists, with her having over 16 medications a day through her peg. In addition to this, Charlotte has speech, OT, physio appointments, as well as appointments for medication and equipment scripts, and having her foot orthoses. Before all of this, my mum was a principal, so we went from having 2 incomes, which were very well off, and we were a fairly wealthy family. However, now, after Charlotte being born and my mum not being able to work any longer, the family lives on a carer's pension, and we struggle to kind of scrape together enough to buy milk. Now, I'm not saying this to try and get pity or sympathy out of all of you, but to show how much of having Charlotte in my life was a pivotal point and really changed the direction of my childhood and where I was headed in life. And it really shaped who I am as a person. As being a young carer, it was no longer part of me, but because of how young I was when Charlotte was born, it's almost become me in a way. Charlotte's now stable, but her care needs are still very extensive, and we're still very involved in the care of Charlotte. And all of these memories and experiences from years ago still seem so fresh. And it's because of this that it's brought me to help others in similar situations and people who are in harder situations themselves or have to go through more difficult stuff. And it's also due to my large responsibility for from my younger years that it has given me skills such as assertiveness, time management, self motivation, and initiative to prompt me to push for better support for carers and the Charlottes of tomorrow. So, this was kind of my motivation for starting up SWAN. I realized that there wasn't really, well, no, sorry, I didn't start up SWAN. That's Heather Renton. I won't take credit for that. For starting up SWAN Siblings, the siblings offshoot of SWAN. And I realized that there was a bit of a crack there where the siblings of children with undiagnosed diseases or syndromes kind of fell between the cracks and didn't have that support from peers. And I also realized within my own household, because I have three sisters, that though I may not be struggling at times through the same conditions and through the same lifestyle, everyone copes differently and has a different perspective. And I've actually kind of tested this theory in a bit of a video I did for SWAN Siblings. And on the video, I learnt that everyone has their own different perspective. For instance, my eldest sister, Bella, who was very emotional about the more difficult times and the harder times that we had in our life, and in a way kind of distances herself from the caring side point of view. And Emma takes a completely different perspective. She craves attention and but sees caring as normal and really wants to get involved and loves helping with Charlotte. And I believe that it's given me a voice to try and help and advocate for other young carers and carers out there. It's also the fulfillment and satisfaction I've felt from helping others that has kind of led me to further opportunities where I can advocate for other young carers and other carers in general. For instance, I had an opportunity to do with TEDx, where I was kind of asked to do a TEDx talk at the age of 14. I've promoted young carers as a media ambassador for Carers Australia, had a short film made on my young carer role with Charlotte by Department of Communities that was released last year on Youth Week, and presented at the Carers WA conference last year. And only last week was invited to speak at the Youth Advisory Council on my role as a young carer. Now, this may seem like I'm trying to promote myself here, and I don't want it to seem like that, because I can assure you I'm not trying to promote myself, but rather I kind of want to share my story and hope to get a glimpse into other people's point of views and other people's perspectives on life. And due to reaching such a wide audience, I hope to raise awareness in society of the need for drastic increase in the recognition of how extensive young carers and carers' roles are for looking after either their sibling or their child. Well, in some cases, parents as well. Through encountering many young carers through these opportunities and through SWAN Siblings, that, like myself, young carers experience the intersectionality of factors such as poverty and possibly having their education suffer a bit, as well as having their recreational and socializing opportunities kind of restricted due to the caring responsibilities. For instance, in my family, when Charlotte was born, my mum was no longer able to work because caring, as I'm sure you all know, is a full-time job. And my mum had to resign as a principal, and we had to live on a carer's pension. With my education, like I said previously, due to Charlotte being born and the increased medical issues, we had to head down to Perth a lot for hospital, and as such, that kind of took away from my schooling because I wasn't able to go to a school 2 hours away. And finally, with the recreational and socializing opportunities, my family hasn't really been able to, myself and my siblings haven't really been able to socialize as much as we would otherwise, though we try to get friends over every now and then, purely because of the struggles of getting Charlotte out of the house and how difficult that is. I mentioned earlier that I had an opportunity to present a TEDx talk. Um, and after extensive conversations with my TEDx curator, Ope, he felt my message or my idea worth sharing was not my story as I thought it was going to be, um, but rather how I actually survived through these conditions and thrived with every aspect of it. Well, not every aspect, but as much as you can. And he came up with, well, my homework then was to really try and find out what made me survive as a young carer, because I'd never actually asked this question previously to myself or anyone else. And eventually, I came up with 3 strategies and 3 ideas that I could possibly get across as some strategies that I used and some things that I used in my own life as a young carer. The first one being choosing your attitude. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be happy all the time, because that's impossible. And every now and then you can feel upset and sad, because there's always time for that, and those emotions wouldn't exist if well, those emotions wouldn't exist if it wasn't necessary. But rather to capitalize and maximize on any potential good that you see in bad situations. So, for example, a daily occurrence in our house is my sister with an undiagnosed syndrome vomiting. And this happens on a daily basis, possibly even twice a day sometimes. And when we just finished the peg feeds, finished administering the medications, and it's late at night, we're all tired, and then I walk in to check if she's asleep, and we just see vomit sprayed everywhere, from the floor to the walls to the ceiling. Somehow, your heart just sinks. And I'm sure for all of you, it's the same thing. Your heart just sinks. But even through tough situations like that, it's just to really try and pull the best out of those situations by putting music on, by making cheesy jokes, anything just to lighten that mood. My second strategy is to seize the day. As I've probably already implied, most days Charlotte's health was pretty poor, and she either is in hospital or at home and is hard to get out of the house. But every so often we have those days of blue skies where, well, either a day or maybe a week, maybe if we're lucky 2 weeks, where there's just blue skies, she's well, and we can actually go out and do something. And my family has learnt to really try and take advantage of these moments and try and get out of the house as much as possible when we have those opportunities. So if it means going to our favourite island, Rottnest, which is just a ferry ride away, or going to a trampoline centre in Perth, it's just those small things that we know our family and Charlotte will enjoy, to try and make our lives that little bit brighter. And the final strategy I've learned is self-regulation. Now, through personal experiences over the years, I've learnt that with a lack of sleep, when not eating well, with a lot of responsibility, a lot of stuff on, my mental health and my ability to regulate my emotions really starts to deteriorate. And this really kind of all came together after a big emotional blowout in a way that I had, and directed at my mum. Now, she probably shouldn't have been the target of it. I just had a lot of stuff on. But she asked to purely read through one of my assignments that I had due in a week as an ex-grammar teacher. And just then, looking back on it now, I have no idea why, but I exploded emotionally and went off into my room and slammed the door on her. In there, though, I reflected. I thought about the amount of responsibility that I had on, as well as caring responsibilities that are just constant, as well as other things like a lack of sleep due to studying late at night and many other extracurricular activities that I had on. And I realized that all of these things just kind of combined to make that a big explosion of emotion. When I was invited to present tonight on the Meet the Expert segment of SWAN, I actually asked my mum, but what am I an expert on? My mum's answer was, "You're an expert on being a young carer." And I realised that I could perhaps provide an insight to parents on some of the aspects of being a young carer, and possibly get a snapshot into the life of, well, my young carer journey, but also a snapshot into every young carer. And I hope that through me being here tonight, though some of it may not be associated to you and may not be relevant to your situations, I hope that there may be something or some aspect or some lesson that you have learnt from me being here tonight, just to make that life just to make life for you or your SWAN sibling, a SWAN child, that bit easier. I'll just leave you with the quote, because carers, no matter what their age, are invaluable. As Pablo Casals said, the capacity to care is the thing which gives life its deepest significance. Thank you.